So hi, everyone. I'm Rosemary Brisco from To the Web. I'm based in Vancouver, Canada, and I work with B2B marketing teams to integrate AI into their marketing strategy to improve business performance. So first of all, thank you for all of you who filled out the survey. If you haven't done so yet, please do. It's in the chat. And I'm going to be incorporating all the additional feedback into a report that Paul and I'll send out later. So I'm going to start by presenting a high-level overview with the key findings from our AI Barriers to Adoption survey. Then we're going to walk through each survey question, and I encourage all of you to actively share your perspectives and ideas and recommendations, because the goal is that we're going to learn from each other as we do this. And ultimately, we want actionable next steps to break down these barriers. So I probably don't need to say this, but don't be shy. And I am going to share my screen.
Well, Rosemary, should we ask, do anyone have barriers, or all the Gen AI enthusiasts barrier free?
No, it's not barrier free for sure. Are you seeing my screen yet?
We are. We can see it.
You can see you can see the chart?
No, I see your email.
Oh, that's no good. Okay. Sorry. All right, here we go.
Now we see the chart.
Okay, great. All right, so we had about 15 questions, 9 key questions. Our scoring method was very high, moderate, medium, low, and low. So you can see here in our chart, the red is indicating people who answered either high or very high for the question. The 4 questions that had the highest ratings for high and very high started with the security protocols, and then technical infrastructure, problem identification, and employee training. I was happy to see that one come out. So all this data will be available to you later, but we're going to focus first on the ones that are most important. When I looked at the data and the comments that came out in the survey, it really looked like we just had to talk about clarity and goal setting, stakeholder buy-in, technical infrastructure was a big thing. And then, of course, how do we keep employees, new employees and old employees educated in AI and where it's going. So stakeholder buy-in came up with very high and high. We had 10 out of 20, so we had 50 here, 50% here, plus 7 as moderate. So in this regard for stakeholder buy-in, what we were really looking for is how do you secure alignment among executives, IT, and operational teams to provide a seamless AI implementation process. And so what I'm looking to come away with is some feedback from you all about what hurdles you have and what recommendations do you have for overcoming these hurdles. So would anybody like to jump in? And maybe, John, do you want to kick this off with some thoughts about stakeholder buy-in?
Yes, I think it's really critical to think about what are the near-term goals and objectives that different stakeholders have, and they often vary, by level. So the folks lower down may have operational, like I'm running a call center, I have operational numbers I need to hit, whereas the chief operating officer that person reports to may have margin goals to hit, and the person above them, the CEO or the board may have, return on capital goals to hit. And so I think you have to be really clear on your stakeholders as to how what you're doing links to their goals and objectives. And so that's the first thing. The second thing that a lot of people miss, I think, is you want to do something that has a fast cycle so you can show real results, whether those results are financial or customer behavior or internal opinion or whatever, satisfaction. And, in the field of biology, and I'm not a biologist, the only thing I know about biology is I have some, but as I understand it, if the reproductive biologists study mayflies because they have a 24-hour life cycle. They're born, live, and die in 24 hours. They don't study, Galapagos turtles that can live over 100 years. So you want to make sure that you're picking something that has a cycle time that's measurable within the relevant time to meet stakeholder needs. So anyway, those 2 thoughts.
And what do you think is quick? 3 months? 2 months?
Well, it really depends on organizations. I think it's been my experience that if you don't deliver within a budget cycle, it's often very hard. So most companies have a budget cycle. It's a year long. It takes some time to go get the money and then to show the results. So often it's 6 months or less in terms of the near term impact on, if we go back to the 3 R's on the reduce piece, that, I think you want to have a cycle time that's 2 quarters or less to get going.
I think, Michael, you've got a comment? Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. So just real quick, John, I like what you said, except keep in mind we're talking about AI. 2 quarters is going to be COBOL to Lightspeed. I had put in comments, even just weekly or monthly, just check in. How's it going? By the way, there's something new. Or on the other hand, just pick a standard. We're only going to work on this. And we recognize we're not going to be leading edge in 6 months, but at least we have something stable to track over time.
Oh, yes. And I believe that I'm talking about pilots, right? That in terms of a 6-month time frame, you're not going to do a transformation in 6 months. So there's some recent research by Randy Bean that they just did a thing where they said, look, 60% of companies are doing pilots and only a little under 5% are in production. And I think that's good to keep in mind. The other thing that's interesting is over 86%, I think it's 86.1% of folks in their survey said they were going to increase their generative AI budgets in 2024 compared to 2023. But yes, absolutely. I'm talking about just getting going. Call centers, contract review. Paul and I are talking to a senior executive at a very large private equity fund, and is very specific applications within the business model that they're trying to get done, whether it's reducing indirect cost or helping productivity in the main core. They're doing pilots on those to then show scalability.
And Rosemary, I would add just that, at least what I've seen, there's been a lot of focus just on getting a pilot, which was exciting. What is this shiny object? We want to say we have an open AI thing, and I think this move back to traditional value add and away from pilot theater or pilot learning is an important one. John's got to go ahead, John.
Well, I attended a meeting for an insurance company in their call center, and the person in charge, his revelation was that we need to start saving a lot more data and stuff we were getting rid of. So in other words, companies have to start doing a decluttering, and that sounds like a buzzword, but decluttering and reorganization of what their information base is for what they're going to do, because they're going to actually take this and go internal, just like what's the name? Wall Street Bank did, actually. Bloomberg did. They took their internal data and they basically put it on their LLM, and essentially they're charging customers to go back into their data. So it's kind of a fundamental way they have to look at that first before a pilot program gets in there, because you want to put it in, but what information are we going to train it on as opposed to training it from the outside?
Great. I think Manny, go ahead, Manny. We'll go back to Rosemary.
Yeah, just one quick point. I think John touched this, was overall budget. Like what I'm hearing from companies is we want to do something, we want to play AI, but it's not cheap. Any game you play, Manny, how much money do we need? Like, how many engineers do you need? What are we going to use, AWS or Google? We're going to do something inside. Give me a budget estimate, and then we'll figure out what we'll tackle and what are the KPIs to measure to make sure we're getting ROI on the money we spent.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, because on some other data I looked at, the cost hurdle was one of the biggest ones, and cost reduction. So anybody else have any feedback on this before we move on to the next one?
Bob's got his hand up, Rosemary.
Oh, hi, Bob. Thanks.
Hi, Rosemary. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So as John knows, I gave a presentation at Harvard a couple of months ago, and had quite a few folks that followed up with me afterwards. One of them was pretty surprising. It's actually, the hurdle was actually even more basic than what's being discussed right now. Her name is Lisa Shaw. The company she works for is called Veriforce, which is a supply chain risk management company based in Texas. She's the chief marketing officer, 15 years out. So she was a graduate of 98, and she was super interested. So we ended up spending an hour and a half talking about it. She got all excited about what's possible. And then I went to her website, and right on the front of the website was this ROI calculator. And I think we're all familiar with it. You provide us a ton of information about you, your company, your spending, and that sort of thing, and we'll calculate stuff. And what I told her is, look, people aren't going to do that today, days and age, but as you present that, what you could do is give them feedback in return, point them to articles, what have you, and so forth. So then we talked about, okay, how about present it to your executive team? I'll do a free tutorial. We'll see where we'll go from there. And the CEO is actually quite educated. He's got a JD from Harvard Law School, and you look at the rest of the staff, and he's hired a stellar staff. And where they're stuck with is where we were probably 6 to 9 months ago, after Jeffrey Hinton did an enormous amount of damage to the industry, to Paul's earlier point, hallucinations. So they can't even get past the executive staff's fear of AI and even trying it. So I would say that the more basic thing is, how do we get people even to try it? And I would also add to that, Rosemary, if you remember a presentation that you gave several months ago, it was how to use custom instructions. So in other words, how do you reduce this probabilistic results that aren't so aligned with the questions? In some cases, I think, and maybe that's just one example, but it's actually even more basic than that.
Yeah, thank you. I think people in companies are kind of hiding behind AI in their firms. So, and David, you have your hand up, and then we'll go to David Cutler and then David Owen. And yes, okay, lots of questions. All right.
Good job, Rosemary.
Okay, David, you have a minute or two. And David, we can't hear you.
Hi, this is Manoj David.
Okay, I got it. Sorry.
Okay.
You want to go?
Yes, David, go ahead, please.
Okay, so I'll make this quick, because it's maybe everyone might have the problem, so we don't have to go deep into it. But I'm working with some banks, mid-sized banks, and they are arguing internally about which department will be the best to demonstrate the value of this thing, this AI thing. And they do have budget, they have 100,000, 200,000, give or take, as an investment. But each of the different departments are looking to be the innovation, poster child for the bank. And we have several of them in front of say, listen, you can all do it. And that's messing their head. They gotta decide which one. So I think getting the use case farther down the line, we're still early, will help decide. But multiple projects don't seem to work at some companies. So having to decide and choose.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about who's going to own this. David Owen, could you go next, please?
Yeah, just 2 comments on this. So I've been working with a healthcare consulting firm that serves primarily private equity-backed companies in the healthcare space. And the way I got them.
Can you speak up a bit, please?
Okay. Probably need to attend to the mic. Can you hear me okay now?
That's a little better, yes.
Okay. So I'm consulting to a firm that does consulting to private equity-backed companies in the healthcare space. And the way I got them over the hurdle of the fear is we went right to creating a data policy relative to AI, and guidelines for which chatbots to use, under which conditions that would, protect client data. And so we, that was sort of table stakes right there. And now I've forgotten what the second point is, but I thought I'd share that. It might be helpful.
Well, no, I think that's really interesting because I don't think still a lot of companies have an employee use policy that's focused around AI. So really important. And
oh, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And Manoj, David, would you like to go next?
I'm sorry if I could make my second point. I'm now remembered. What I'm seeing is there's a number of companies where different employees, I guess what we're seeing is number of employees, different departments employees are doing little kind of skunk works projects here and there. And so it's going to come, like, I think in 2024, where they're going to have to kind of do an assessment of, okay, which one of these are we going to actually invest in and put some real sort of product management kind of processes around. So I'm really predicting that there'll be some maturing in this year.
Good point. Okay, Manoj, please go next.
Hi, everybody. I'm advisor to some of the Fortune 500 organizations, currently with the banking and energy. And the common hurdles that I have seen for the last close to around 6 months to 9 months is influencing the board of directors has been the biggest challenge, the single most biggest challenge. And if you're able to, cut the ice over there, then it becomes relatively easy to handle the other hurdles, which are typically in the operation side, like security and data protections and things like that. And this quarter is going to be more interesting is because, there are close to around 16 to $18 billion, which is coming for renewal. These are primarily to the systems integrators bucket. And this is where most of the Gen AI spending is going to sit. So the likes of Accenture and Infosys are going to be there. And they have reduced the prices to such an attractive package that it will be a Herculean task for any other new entity to get inside this area. This is one thing which I would like to share. If there are other entities which has a niche skill set or else, offering in Gen AI or as AI, I think the easiest one is to go through two routes. One is through the management consultants like McKinsey, Bain, TPI, who are the trusted advisors to the board of directors. Okay. And the other one is through the fund managers like Blackstone, BlackRock, and things like that. So
thank you.
That's what I would like to chat.
Thank you. And Luda, can you go next, please? And then we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my tech was not working previously. So I'm helping Paul as one of the analysts in GAI Insights. We talked about, several people hit on it, that there is a stakeholder alignment is usually a big problem. It's not as big of a problem in this particular case. However, I think there has to be one or several champions of the overall AI implementation. And that champion has to, I think there are 3 effective methods for the champion to get the alignment. One is to do some research and come up with use cases that are relevant to the company and get excitement around them. They're representative, but might be not necessarily the problem statement that they want to focus on. And then get essentially brainstorming to assess the value of those projects that are the top projects, and pick the ones that really will generate some serious value to the company. So the champions are critical in this case to get the alignment going. I think there's a lot of interest and potential that people realize that is there. So I don't think there is real problem in getting the synergy. It's just too many projects and they need to be realigned to get a focus. And that's really the role of the champion.
That's really good. Good point.
Hey, real quick, but just a quick footnote before we go on. I appreciate taking all these questions. I would just add for the organizations that are frozen on security, one of the things we recommend to do is zero risk security pilots that don't cost anything or cost very low. Go use one of these wonderful low cost solutions out there and build a chatbots for your publicly facing information and start that learning curve. So I've been in 2 organizations now where that fear, and it's around it's all of there, and everyone's so scared to do anything, and that's reinforced. And I think there's practical ways to unclog that.
Just letting them know they have the choice, public and private. I mean, it's a huge thing that people don't even get.
Well, I just wanted, for our next one, we're going to talk about security product protocols because it was the highest one. And when I combined high and very high, you can see that it came out by far the highest. But what was interesting in some of this data was some people didn't consider it to be important at all. They considered it, 10% low or moderately low. So I'm really interested to hear what you all have to say about security protocols and what do you see as the most challenging aspects of this? Yes, John, please.
Oh, I was saying that if you're going to do a pilot program and security is the priority that you want to force, that what you want to do is you want to select those employees and test them out that are most apt to basically participate. And they can train other people because it's somebody on everybody's staff that is sharper than others because they have a real love about this situation. And those are the people you want in there to ask those silly questions about, hey, is this thing really secure? And that way you talk directly to the manager from those people, and then you can get a conversation going and point out to them what we can do to fix it or what they can do to fix it.
Right. But the whole company has to be satisfied that they have the protocols in place, correct? So doesn't that have to be taken care of at the IT level first? Because this is so critical to the company's protection of their data?
Yeah, but IT is just going to implement it. I mean, the people are going to utilize are going to have to work. The manager works with the people they select to run the program, and the IT people are just going to have some way to, because you got sharp IT people and then you get IT people. So I have to say it that way. Okay, you got sharp people using this stuff that really love it because some people love IT and some people you do it as a job. And then you got managers that basically need that communication. And then essentially, if you can get those teams together or those people together as a team, essentially you should be able to minimize and have them ask that serious question. How is our business? Where is our business in the ecosystem that people might find it attractive to screw up? If you don't ask that, then essentially, then that should be on your mind. But then everybody should be open-minded about any suggestions coming up during the time or planning before the program starts and in the middle of it or basically down the road to make sure that it has, those questions are answered. And then they may not be answered fully, but you understand at that point, by the time this program may either evolve or stop, basically, that this is what we answered. That we're going to go from there.
Okay, and Manny and then Amanda.
Yeah, Rosemary, my thought on why some of these maybe came out low is start internal, pick some simple use cases to get going like we talk about, where maybe security is not as high. as what it should be, then you can just focus on internal data, internal support, maybe CRM type application support, etc. So therefore, maybe I'm not as concerned about security as I would if it were a bigger public, more type of exposure.
Yeah, that's a good point. That might be why some people either didn't answer it or marked it as low. Amanda, what do you think?
So one thing that I was thinking about from a data perspective and about training the models themselves is, even if the organization has some sort of a firewall, right, that they're not just sort of training and putting data out into ChatGPT, maybe they have firewalls they're doing in-house. But the fact that depending on who's looking at the customer data, PII, different data we're training it on, there could be some things overlooked. Like, what kind of data are you putting in there? Who has access to this? Whether it's like the prompt engineers or whoever's sort of messing around with that data, making sure that security measures are in place that, not everybody has access to that. Like, for example, when I was in retail at Macy's, I worked in the data, area. We had access, background checks, all this to have social security numbers and credit card numbers, all that. But you would think, companies would think about this, but I think that could be a barrier, is making sure when you're training this, though, everybody doesn't have access as you're training on different, demographic, whatever sensitive information it could be, right? That everybody doesn't have access. And I don't know if that's a top of mind for everybody, because I'm thinking now as they're training, they might say, well, it's in-house, it's safe, but that doesn't mean everybody in the company should have access to every single piece of data you have as well. So just wanted to throw that out there to the group.
Right, so they can't enter it into an AI, right? Any other comments? Has anybody have any security measures that they've seen to be effective that they've been able to implement?
Hey, Rosemary, it's Adam down here in Melbourne. One thing we've found effective is to take like a ring model. So we actually, started with basically the core security team validating the security, and then expanded it to 10 more people, then expanded it to 20 more people, so that you could sort of control the extent to which there's the risk and exposure within the organization.
Good point. Okay, got it. All right, I'm going to move on to technical.
Sorry, Alex. I think Alex has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Alex. Go ahead, please.
Sure. So I've been in security for like 10 years, working for big tech, for Dell SecureWorks. And interestingly enough, not many companies in this domain are still concerned with AI security or developing any solutions for this. So in November, I attended a huge security summit in Boston. And then I did like a survey for participants and for some of my workmates, and I talked to probably 30 people in security, and I asked them very simple questions. Tell me, how do I secure my LLM solution or chatbot or anything? And I got basically, I don't know, I got only 3 or 4 recommendations for a software, how to secure my LLM. And that's from professionals in security domain. That's amazing. I was hugely surprised. But security, providing security solutions is not trivial. You cannot trust to a small company to develop a comprehensive security solution for your company. And developing this can take a lot of time. So for the moment, my best advice to you, if you wanna secure your solution, is just try to implement your AI solutions with public data. So the data that you can basically give away, and it doesn't affect your security. So for the moment, we are there is no reliable security solutions. I can give you like a few examples how you can do the security, but that's like a separate topic. So for the moment, it's not there yet. Hopefully, it will appear later this year. So we need to wait.
Okay, thanks very much, Alex. So going along to technical infrastructure, which was very high also. Interesting that we still have a lot of people who consider technical infrastructure only low, moderate to low. So I think that from everything I've learned in this group, that this is should be the key thing that is most important. So I guess the question is, what are the key elements of technical infrastructure that need to be strengthened for successful AI adoption? Would anybody like to start off with that? Adam, how about you? You should be all.
I'm just thinking about these results, and it to me it really reflects that most organizations haven't gotten this far yet. That's why it isn't a bigger problem.
Yes.
It's not a hurdle because they aren't at that point, right? They're still figuring out how to get the budget and come up with a use case. You know, technical infrastructure is something a year from now they're going to realize they didn't accommodate for in budget. So part of it, I think, is the hurdle is not understanding what infrastructure they need because they don't have solutions yet. And like as soon as you decide on an infrastructure, to the earlier conversation, you're going to have to concede that you're going to be 3 to 6 months behind because you're implementing something that's already no longer a moving target. So I don't know. I think that's probably what I'd say is the hurdles there.
So would you,
just remember when websites were kicking in, people were like, okay, well, who's going to own it? Where's it going to go? What technology? Oh, it's going to be an agency is doing this, an outside firm is doing. Oh my God, how are they going to our old website, our old company on this outside firm? It's the same thing. So I think our opportunity is to have these pilot projects where we get very first point, get them to be comfortable with it. And then it's not going to break anything, and then, several months down the line, we'll have other conversations. That's how we're doing it.
That's a good point. Yes, Bob.
So picking back on Adam's comment, I spent a lot of time in the data science, data engineering LinkedIn groups, and there's a handful of pretty well-known, experienced folks there. And the number one issues they talk about is lack of clean data. So remember, prior to AI, I think that I heard a quote, I don't know whether this is backed up with data, but something like 97% of all data is dormant. So we've never actually had the tools to actually make use of them. All of a sudden, AI comes along, great tools to deal with both structured and unstructured data, but the data isn't clean. So if you look, for example, at Saul Rashadi, she was the former CIO of Estee Lauder. Read some of her posts and you can get a pretty deep dive. There's others as well. Olivier Molander, for example, talks about it, Chad Sanderson. But in any case, in that group, you'll see a lot of folks describe exactly what Adam's talking about. It's just complete lack of clean data. And again, they haven't had the tools to actually use it yet. So what drives to do that? TBD. Some say it's having a CAIO in present. And then, okay, how does the CAIO work with the CIO and the CDO? Does the company even have a CDO? So these are kind of organizational as well as technology issues.
Sure, and these aren't problems that are new. I mean, data's been dirty for a long time. It's in silos and so on.
Well, my point is that now it's brought up to the forefront, right? You now have tools to actually.
Right.
Just one more comment. Salesforce, the CEO of their AI group, made an announcement about a month ago. It's the product's coming out in February, but it's probably the most sophisticated commercial RAG out there because it basically is going to take both their unstructured data set and the structured data set and do what I'd call real prompt engineering. This is at the engineering level, not what we as users call prompt engineering. It's a pretty sophisticated product. Watch the demo if you want, but the point is you now have a tool set. The question is whether the data is ready for it.
Right. Adam, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I can never decide if I want to unmute or lower my hand first. There we go. Yeah, a couple things. I'm reading more detail into what it says there about the data organized and clean. So I recommend readiness assessments, right, which are a really good way to identify what the current state of your data is, and then you can put some sort of initiatives in place for data hygiene. And the other thing with regards to the scalability support, I put a link in the chat to a news article we reviewed just last night about these orchestration startups and sort of that middle layer they're going to play between organizations and multi-model infrastructures. So I think they might be part of the approach to overcome is finding that third party that can help serve as that interface from an infrastructure perspective.
Okay, great. I'm going to go to our, problem identification, which was also a large one. So this issue is around addressing specific issues such as customer churn or operational inefficiencies to gain meaningful AI benefits, moving beyond just, the whole AI buzz thing. So, how can corporations effectively identify the problems that are well suited? How would you recommend that they start this? Because first of all, you've got all these different departments that are hoping to try something, pilot AI. So how do you start this process? Do you start it in marketing? Do you pick out the department first? Yes, Luda, please go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah, this is actually not very difficult. I recommend, or I in the companies I work with, I recommend that they start with their regular strategy. What they want to achieve, what are the projects on the plate, what are the pain points that they need to differentiate the company and get an edge to the company. And it can be certain products areas, it can be customer service, it can be many areas where there's pains, right? And where the strategy addresses those pains. And then those are potential projects for AI involvement, right? And having a list of those, and then, as I mentioned before, maybe use cases of how other people in their vertical industry or not have solved those problems. Like people mentioned Jerry case in scaling the customer service experience, for example, and then get a sense of if we were to solve it with AI, what would it bring to us in terms of business impact? And that will get them going quite a bit. They will have 80 problems before they know it.
Well, right. I think quantifying the results is really, really hard. But we know that based on all the data that we've seen, that there's, especially in the repetitive tasks, that there's huge time savings there, right? Robert, would you like to go next, and then Lucinda, and then we'll move to the next question?
Sure. In my experience, what it takes is somebody in the company gets the bug and really thinks this is important and does some kind of a project that he then circulates around what's happening and makes some publicity on it, and it gets everybody excited about it. And then people start thinking about what it could actually do. But it takes some kind of champion to get it started, to get some project that makes it look really great. And then everybody gets behind it quickly. But without that, all kind of committees and all kind of meetings don't do anything at all. All it takes is some project that somebody did, sometimes in their spare time, that really did something really important and it really sounded great, that gets everybody excited in the company. And I've seen that happen over and over and over again. in companies where the budgets are frozen, you have no more money, all this stuff's the same, true. But in fact, one big monstrous demonstration of something impressive will really change everything.
I think that's excellent. I have a client who we started with that, and these team members are using tools that aren't even approved yet. So we're having to be a little cautious about promoting them when we're not allowed to use these tools. So it's always a catch-22. Lucinda, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I definitely want to underscore the points that were made previously, which is, strategy that aligns to the business strategy, and having a champion. That's both are really key. Other aspects to consider might be, what are the big pain points? In other words, pain points that are important but have been difficult to solve. Another one is kind of, in identifying different types of use cases. I think it's actually a good idea to cast a wide net, to look at a lot of different things and really consider them, but also do things like consider things like speed to deployment or speed to impact. And then the risk, I think a lot of people are doing for their initial projects that if it makes a mistake, the downside risk is very low. The clarity of the ROI, a lot of these, like you can say, okay, we're going to get this, and this benefit, but unless you have a baseline ahead of time, and then you can really, quantify what's the difference between the world before and the world after. That's another thing. And then finally, data viability. And as we were talking before, the cleanliness of the data. And actually, it may even be different than cleanliness, right? So, for example, if you want to know something about, if you uploaded some knowledge base on policy, let's say, like policy on 401ks and healthcare, you could have a lot of old documents in there. You could have conflicting documents in there, but the LLM has to come up with what the right answer is. So there is some cleaning of the data that you put into your knowledge base that is, I guess, analogous to cleaning of data in a relational database, but it's still got to be, thinking about, well, what kind of questions are people going to ask, or what kind of summaries, and then how do you make it so that conflicting data or not up-to-date data is de-emphasized.
Right. Very good points.
Excuse me, Rosemary, I just want to do a quick time check. I want to make sure we've got a couple minutes for open mic. Do you want to?
Yeah, we can do these other ones at another time.
Yeah.
So let's do open mic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a good discussion. I'd hate to close it down. So maybe we can pick it up a little bit next week.
I want to second like Lucinda's point. We are getting a lot of requests where people are uploading data and they're saying like, hey, can you figure out which is the right version of the document, right? Because we have one pricing page from 3 years ago and we have one pricing page from this month. Can the LLM figure out which is the right one to use? So those are sort of like really tough things that are happening. The other thing that people are not thinking about is how to keep the LLM and the bot in sync with the data, especially if the data is like, say, your website, right? You update your pricing on your pricing page. Does the bot keep in sync with it? Or is the bot saying one thing and is the pricing page saying another thing? So these are the sort of issues that are now coming up, like change data capture and keeping data in sync. So good problems to have.